You can move the thing if you want, in the middle. There.
Shana Tova, everybody.
Shana Tova.
What a gift to be here with all of you. There's a old Yiddish proverb that says human beings think or plan and God laughs. It's a way of expressing a condition of being human, that we are limited, we are partial, we can't control everything, we are mortal. And that theme is so central to these Yamim Noraim, these days of awe, where we're confronted with the question, given our limited nature, given that we have so little control, given that we're mortal, how are you living? Are you actually living? Can you live more fully in the face of this reality, confronting and embracing it? And one of the things that has caught my attention this year is thinking about this response that God has of seeing our limited nature, our attempts to live and live well, the inability to control all that we might want to control, and God laughing, God being amused by this situation. And what is the nature of this amusement, of this divine mirth at our condition? We get insight into it, I believe, from the reading we're about to do. When we're told at the beginning of the reading that Sarah says after the birth of her child Yitzchak, she says, Tzchok asali Elohim. Tzchok asali Elohim. It's often translated as God brought me laughter. Our Machzor says, God had made laughter for me. It's a perfectly plausible reading. It is also plausible to read it as God has made me laughter. God has made me into laughter. After this most unlikely of experiences, Sarah understands herself to become, in this reading, the embodiment of laughter. And more than that, I want to suggest that since it is God who has created her as laughter in this experience, maybe we can understand her as being the embodiment of God's laughter, that she has become the sound of God laughing. To unpack this self-understanding, it's useful to compare Sarah's laughter after the birth of her child to the laughter she has when she finds out that she is supposedly going to have a child at her old age. It says at that moment, V'titzak Sarah b'kirba, that Sarah laughed within herself. For me, in this reading, the key word is b'kirba, within herself. I want to suggest that her previous laughter is one that remains within. It doesn't transcend the boundaries of self. It expresses her attachment to, her inability to let go of the world as it is, to take the risk of hoping for what she most longs for, to have a child. In this way, it is a very understandable laughter of fear as she dismisses the possibility of a different world. But in our reading this morning, with the birth of Isaac and the arrival of a world she had excised from the landscape of her imagined future, she understands herself to have become God's laughter. And I think particularly in relief, in comparison to the previous laughter, we can understand this laughter now as the laughter of possibility, of hope. It's a laughter of joyous celebration that what is not what needs to be or necessarily will be. And it's worth pointing out that Sarah is the author of this understanding. God does not speak directly to her, telling her she has become God's laughter. She knows from within that the ebullience she feels is, in this unimaginable becoming real, is divine joy and delight. I suspect, and again want to suggest, she senses this because it emerges as she is released from the thicket of sorrow and despair. This godly amusement arises on the other side of doubt and fear. As the poet Khalil Gibran writes, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that has burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives?" What Sarah adds to this poet's stunning insight is the recognition that the cup overflowing, the lute's exquisite song, and the laughter after and from the encounter with sorrow is none other than the work of God. In this way, as I've learned from my teacher and our fellow congregant, Dr. Judith Cates, the unconfirmed divine encounter, the intuition of being in God's presence after enduring doubt and listening beyond God's silence, is the model of faith that Sarah offers us. It is a model that perhaps for many of us is more resonant and more relatable than that of her more celebrated and focused on husband. And Sarah invites us to follow her on this path of faith and laughter. As she says in concluding the verse in which she declares herself to have become God's laughter, Kol hashomea yitzchak li. All who hear will laugh with me. All who hear of Sarah, who truly take in the truth she has come to embody, shall laugh just as she does. May we all grow in our capacity to emulate Sarah, to laugh as God laughs, with a sense of possibility and hope, aware of but undeterred by the sorrow and despair we have experienced, and in fact informed, transformed, expanded, and inspired through wrestling with its presence in our lives. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, Yisher Koach.